getting everything that you see here today here. We also heard the importance of balancing that with all the other transportation modes, how we move on our road network, whether walking, cycling, transit, and how we achieve these other transportation goals that the city cares about safety, congestion, and using that space efficiently, but also the context of each unique street and how that differs throughout the city. So I'm going to walk you through how this kind of compares for the different routes. I'll go through each one by one, but for all of them, by grade separating the rail line, it makes the road network more reliable. We're no longer, trucks, vehicles, people are no longer stopping at the at-grade crossing without a certainty of, if you're traveling one day, you might have to stop and wait. It could be 4 minutes, could be 30 seconds, could be 20 minutes, you don't know. And another day, the same trip could take you less time, or you wouldn't stop. So just by grade separating, that creates a more reliable network and helps achieve a lot of those goals. So for prior venables, we talked about this yesterday, the spacing of your arterial routes is important for serving that east-west route. For prior, we would also have more right turns, left turns, and through traffic at Venables and Clark. In terms of local vehicle access, it would be very similar to today, and local access is important for trucks to get to Partis Row, to get to those businesses, for residents to get home as well. And I just wanted to explain again the differences between the overpass and underpass options for prior. There's just a little bit of a difference at Raymer Avenue because of the current building, the Villa Cafe building, and more of that is in your guide. So for William again has a relatively equal spacing of the arterial network. It is still a relatively direct route for east-west travel. To avoid that shortcutting and traffic into Grandview Woodland, that intersection would tee into Clark Drive, as I mentioned. In terms of local access, there would obviously be changes to how people access the area. So off of William, you would be able to access the area kind of from the west side onto the new street network at St. Paul's. At Thornton Avenue, or Thornton Street, which is just east of Trillium Park. You could access the north through Hawks Avenue, Chess, and from Raymer, there would be an intersection. And from Raymer, you could access some of the other industrial streets, such as Glen. I wanted to mention as well that for all these options, prior Venables would continue to be an important vehicle route for access to the community, especially with the new hospital for emergency access. Malkin, relatively similar. The route deviates just east of Hawks Avenue by Strathcona Park. So still relatively equal spacing between the arterials. Similarly, access at Thornton Ave, Hawks, Chess, an intersection at Raymer, which would allow vehicles to get to Glen, and then the industrial area kind of east of the rail line would still be able to access the area just off of Clark. For National, the route intersects with Clark much closer to the current intersection at Terminal. It's about 200 meters away. It creates a bit of a challenge during rush hours, especially when there are more vehicles trying to get through. The signal times, it's hard to get all all those vehicles through the capacity of that signal there. And sometimes you'll get some queuing into the intersections, and they'll interact with each other. With National as well, there's fewer opportunities to access the area because the route has fewer kind of intersections with those local streets. The overpass is longer, and the first intersection would be at Chess from the east side. Because of the S-curve that we mentioned yesterday, there would be access from the corners. The 90-degree turns would just be right in and right out. And that's kind of the key aspects of each route for the road network.
We've actually got just a couple extra minutes. Thanks, Carol, for being brief. Was there anything about what you said just technically, like what is an S-curve, what is a right in, what is a right out, that would help you understand the work you're about to do? Yes, so Shang's coming over, Alex. And Shang, let's, and for all of our mic runners, we've been asked to keep the mics on, not turn them off in between sessions. Thank you. Go ahead, Alex.
Just all of those things you said, the right in and right out.
Okay.
What is right in, right out?
Sure.
What is the S-curve?
Sure. A right in, right out would be an intersection where, I guess, with the arterial street, the major street would continue through. To access the local street, you could only turn in, turning right, and you can only come out turning right as well. So if you were coming out of the local street onto the arterial, you wouldn't be able to turn left. You would only be able to turn right.
And the S-curve, could you just, I think there's a laser on the pointer.
So the S-curve, we mentioned this quickly yesterday, but an S-curve is when you have two back-to-back 90-degree turns, creating an S shape.
For super hard to get on. Okay, and over there, yes, Maria.
Hi, you mentioned that Prior Street would stay open, it would continue to be a local route. Are you saying that Prior Street, if one of these other arterials are chosen, will still be open all the way from Main Street to Victoria? Will we still be able to use that as a local road?
So I also received this from, maybe it was your table or another table, a clarification about what would happen to Prior at the rail line if the arterial were moved to another route. And so Lon LeClaire yesterday mentioned this, the False Creek Flats rail corridor strategy that we completed in 2008. If you refer back to his presentation, it's on page 14, slide 27. But the corridor strategy was developed in response to the growing port. And we have a role at the city to support the movements at the port and the rail line, and also to mitigate those community impacts such as safety. We have photos and videos of people climbing across the trains with carrying their bikes, and that's something that we want to reduce. And so the strategy would be over time, as the grade separation occurs on Prior or else to replace Prior, that those streets, including the local streets at Cordova, Union, Raymer, would also close as well.
Okay, so just for clarification, it would no longer be accessible from Victoria to Maine. That would be closed off at the railway station, railway line.
Yes.
So we've got time for one more question, just there for clarification.
And then I just wanted to clarify what I meant by being important for local access. There is a lot of traffic calming and diverters in this Strathcona neighborhood, and so in order to get from one end to the other, there's only a few streets that can do so, especially with the hospital being just on the west side. For emergency vehicles to get into the residential area, Prior would be a main route.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah, actually, you partially addressed it because you said something about Prior would remain important for emergency access, and I just wanted clarification. Does that mean getting into residents in Strathcona, or does that mean ambulances trying to get to the hospital?
It could be both. I don't know if we have anybody from emergency services coming in. They do have like special rules about which roads they choose to drive on, depending on where they're going, what their response rates are, and how reliable they are. But there is also Fire Hall number 1 that's just off of Prior. So there's access to the facilities there and also access to respond to incidents in the neighborhood.
Thanks, Carol. And so we don't have somebody from emergency services, but we will be talking to the fire chief or somebody in the fire department, and also somebody from St. Paul's Hospital, so we can ask some of those questions as we go. So that was a little bit of an intro into thinking about how do we move goods, both by truck and rail through the area. Now we're going to start talking about how do we move people. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Matt Craig from Translink. Come on up, Matt, and he's going to talk about transit. Thank you.
Hi everybody. So my name is Matt Craig. I manage the system planning group at Translink. So we're responsible for planning the regional transportation system. You probably, hopefully all know Transit, or Translink as the provider of transit in the region, but we also play a role in working with local partners, including City of Vancouver and many others, all across the region, working on regional cycling, walking to transit, and regional roads and goods movement. So today specifically focusing on transit in the local area, and specifically what things might you want to be considering as you're deliberating on this, about what makes transit successful across the different alternatives. So there's a lot of transit routes all through the area. Really frequent service. All of these orange lines on the map represent corridors that have frequent service by bus all through the day, at least every 15 minutes. We see on Hastings Street a whole bunch of different services, including a B line, and then specifically of relevance for this discussion is the number 22 bus. One thing you can see in relating back to some of the kind of initial discussion that even Paul was introducing, that all transit buses route primarily on arterial routes, the kind of more major roads. We do that for a reason. They're kind of the most efficient way to get through the community, but also tend to have the destinations that people want to go to. The number 22 bus is also one of the very few all across the region that currently does cross an accurate rail crossing. So you can, the same sort of reliability issues that everyone else has happens to all of those people on the bus. The number 22 bus illustrated here, and the big kind of green bubble around it represents a 5-minute walk from the bus stops. We know that everyone's different. 5 minutes is about the kind of the target of a typical walk of what we plan for in the region. So the transit is successful when people can get to it. And so we're always looking to provide that 5-minute walking service to as many people as we can. So really just a couple of things from me. Really fundamental is any of the options that would be selected, we would still want to continue to provide that east-west bus service on the number 22 through the neighborhood. So any of the options would still continue to have that bus service, primarily because there's a big rail yard to the south, and so we want to be able to still provide that local service to the community on any of the options. And then really two things for you to remember, if you can take away from my talk. One, the first one is more conceptual, which is really for us to achieve our regional and our local objectives of moving people through the region. We want to attract people to transit, and the way to do that is to make it useful and attractive. One of the best ways to do that is providing service that's the most direct. Anytime you've got a route turning left and turning right, without a good reason to go there, it makes it less attractive for people to use. So we're always aiming for the most direct route. And then the second big thing, and perhaps the most relevant to the different alternatives, is transit is only useful if people can actually get to it. So we've got a little icon of a person standing on a corner of basically where we are, and you can see kind of the further away the route is from our venables, the longer the walking distance. So really, I think any alternative starts to impact the distance that people would walk to get to the bus.